So number 13 is asking for the linear correlation coefficient. The next thing is you have that formula sheet on the final. So if you didn't know what linear correlation coefficient was, you could look on the sheet. And if you look under chapter 4, correlation coefficient is R. So we have to find our R. There is a huge formula for doing it by hand, but I'm just asking you to use your calculator. Now, get your calculator out. Especially if you use the Chromebooks, I think you may have to reset this each time. But for it to work, you have to have your diagnostic on. You remember doing that a long time ago? Anytime we're finding R. So to find your diagnostic, you go to Second Catalog. And you have to scroll all the way down. And there's diagnostic on. So you hit enter. It says diagnostic on the screen, and hit enter one more time. Once that's turned on, then I shouldn't have to reset it, but I know some of you on the Chromebooks had an issue with, I don't know what it was. If you completely close out of the TI app or something, it would reset to off. So if you don't see R on your calculator, you need to turn on your diagnostic. Now we are going to enter our data into L1 and L2. So stat edit, clear out anything that's there. Okay, put your X's in your L1 and Y's in L2. Then, if you go to calculate, these are linear points. We're finding the regression line. So we want number 4, linear regression. You may need to change some things because our lists, we've done some different tests since then. Your X's you put in L1, so make sure your X list is L1. Your Y list should be L2. Then you can enter through all of that. And so it gives me a list of information here. Part A, the correlation coefficient, that is just your R value, which was 0.9944. B, the least squares regression line, is the equation of this line. So it tells you on there it's AX plus B. So y equals 2.0233x minus 2.3256. C. What am I asking you to do there? Yeah, just plug in a 3.4 to your line. And you should get 4.5536. Okay. What else do we want to talk about? Please ask if you're
12.
Number 12. Okay. So this time we have their score on a geography test, 62 on a geography and 261 on the math. Did I even tell you how many these were out of? No, so you can't even tell me roughly based off percentage, which one is better. The geography test has a mean of 80 and standard deviation of 15. Math has a mean of 300 and standard deviation of 26. On which test did the student score better? So if I have two different units, essentially, how do I convert those to a standard that I can compare? Z-score. So for each, we have to find the Z. So for my math, to find a Z, you do, remember, look on your formula sheet if you have to. Everything is right on there. I think the Z was under chapter, it's under chapter 3. So it's your X, so your score, so on the math, you got a 261, minus the mean, so the mean of the math was a 300, over standard deviation of the math, which was 26. Okay, so if you calculate that, you get a negative 1.5. Why is it a negative? What does that tell us? Below average. 0 would indicate you were right on average. A positive tells you you're above that, and a negative tells you you're below. A z-score is like standard deviations from the mean. So the center, that represents your mean. If this were 1 standard deviation, you're down here. You're 1.5 standard deviations below the mean. So for your geography, your score was a 62 minus the mean was an 80, standard deviation of 15. You get a negative 1.2. So on the geography, you also scored below average, but you were negative 1.2 standard deviation. So you were about here. So on which one did you do better? Geography. Now, you have to be careful because if those things are positive, it kind of changes the interpretation. Now with the negatives, you want to be as close to the mean as possible. If I said, let's say your Z's were 1.2 and positive 1.5, then which one would be better? Right, 1.2 would be about here, 1.5 would be here. So you want to be higher anytime you can. So we're looking at the bigger number. Okay, what else? Yes, sir.
G, H, and I.
Okay. Number 11, would you go ahead and enter all that in your calculator for me? Let's put it in our L1.
Yes, sir. Can you just do all of number 11?
Sure. So 11, standard deviation obviously is very time consuming. I will not have you do that by hand on the final. Any of this other stuff you certainly could do by hand, or we have the calculator available to us. So let's enter this stuff. The first thing on 11 asks you for the mean. How do you find that? Add them all up and divide by 10, because there were 10 scores. If you do that, you should get 56. If you look under your calculator, if we go to calculate, one variable statistics for L1, your mean is that X bar, so 56. So by hand or on the calculator is fine. Median, how do we get the median? That's the middle. You have to list them from small to large and find the middle point. So in this case, the middle would be between the 5th and 6th values, right? So you would have to average 2 of them. So you end up doing, when you list them in order, 56 plus 58 divided by 2. and you get a 57. On the calculator, how do you find the median? If you scroll down, it's just MED, median is 57. Mode, the calculator does not tell you your mode. What is a mode? The one that shows up the most often, which was 58. We had 3 of those. Range, how do we get that? Right, high minus low. So again, our calculator doesn't tell us that, but we don't need it to. The highest value we had was a 61, the lowest was 51, so the range is 10. E, 5-number summary. So you have to know what those 5 numbers are, but lucky for you, it is on your formula sheet. 5-number summary. The lowest, or the first number is your minimum. So my lowest value was a 51. Second number is quartile 1, which we haven't calculated, but it's just the median of the lower half. Or if you're looking on your calculator, it tells you. So that's 53. Quartile 2 is the same as your median, which was 57. Quartile 3, you can get it from the calculator, or it's just the median of the upper half is 58, and our highest was 61. You guys okay with all of those numbers? Yes, ma'am.
Whenever you're doing the second number and the fourth number, it's the median of the second or the first half and the second half, but do you have 56 and 58 in that?
Yes. So like if I listed them from small to large, it looks like this. So in this case, my middle is right here.
Yeah.
So then I'm just looking
All
at
of those are in all of them, so you don't need any numbers.
right.
Okay.
Okay. F, interquartile range is quartile 3 minus quartile 1. So 58 minus 53 is 5. G, box and whisker. Okay. First of all, when you draw a box and whisker, I don't just want a random box. I asked you to draw a scale underneath it. So let's say we'll start at 50. I'm going to count by ones. You don't necessarily have to. Okay. Your box begins at quartile 1. So my box would start at 53, ends at quartile 3, which was 58. For quartile 2 in the middle, you just draw a vertical line. Your whiskers go down to what? Right. It's your highest and lowest points, excluding any outliers. So to find outliers, you would have to find upper and lower fence, which I did not ask you to do on this one. You can kind of tell, aren't all of these scores pretty close together? Yeah. But to find the outliers, if you did have any, you would draw your whiskers going to the highest or lowest points, except those. And then you just mark those with an asterisk. So like if I had a 10, I wouldn't draw my whisker going all the way down to a 10. I would still stop it at the 51, but then I would go down 10 and put a little asterisk down there to show me that I had a point. Okay, so there's my box and whisker. Standard deviation on your calculator, you have two options. You have an S sub x and you have a sigma sub x. So the sigma, the only time you use that is if you know it is the entire population. You know for certain every single value is included in it. So that's going to be pretty rare. I just said this was a set of scores, so is it every single one? No. So this is our standard deviation, the S. So the 3.33 repeating. And then how do you get variance? Right, it's just your standard deviation squared, so the 3.33 repeating squared, and you get 11.1109. Okay, other questions here? correlation chart, no. We just don't have time on the finals, so. Anything else? So, the next part, tomorrow I'd like to go over units 3 and 4, if we can get that long. If it's too much, let me know and we can assign less today. So, let's have the rest of the class period to work on those, or at least the majority of it.